Mr. David, how are you?
I'm good. Hey, you?
I'm okay. Another week in quarantine land.
Yep, aren't we all?
Yeah. How are things in Nassau with you?
Basically the same. Things are under control, it seems.
You guys are on the downslope of the curve too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
So,
we are. We are, I mean, I don't think you have gotten it quite as bad as we have here, but nonetheless. I don't think you.
yeah. No, I agree. I think Nassau really spiked heavily, and I think like once you got north of Westchester, like Putnam and Orange, that's kind of the
Yep.
dividing line. And then everything north and west of there was pretty minimal on the whole. But
Yeah, although it's interesting, you look at they've been coming out with the serology test results on Cuomo's website, and what it's showing there is that the percentage of the population that has antibodies in the city is about twice what it is for Long Island.
okay, well, I would expect the five boroughs to have the highest percentage by far.
Yep, and that's exactly what it's showing.
Yeah, and then like Long Island second, and then Westchester, Rockland somewhere close behind Long Island.
It looked like Westchester was slightly higher than Nassau.
Okay, well that kind of makes sense because the first big clusters were found there, right?
Yup.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're a little ahead of us.
yeah. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's good to have you here. Welcome to another Sunday evening. We're going to take a break from the interview stuff that we've been doing the last few weeks, and I've brought back my trusted colleague, David Golub. And Dave, it's nice to have you with us. I know that you're eager to go through some Manhattan streets footage from the last month that's been filmed.
Yeah, great to be here.
Yeah, so I suppose since we got a lot to get to, let's get started right away. The video series that you're going to start to see on YouTube on May 25th, and I will take you into my dashboard, which is not something I usually do, but for the purposes of tonight, I will show you what I've got. This is going to be a video series that was filmed almost exclusively in the month of April. It doesn't really have an official title to it, but it is basically themed around the COVID-19 shutdown in the city of New York in the month of April. So what I did was, due to my essential personnel status, whoops, I went too far. Due to my essential personnel status, I had the ability to check out some of the streets of Manhattan. These are streets that, in many cases, I've never even driven before. Certainly, I've never tried to film them before. And I thought that this was a very interesting time in our history to try to do just that. So we're going to take you through the series that I came up with tonight. We'll preview that. These videos, as you can see by the scheduled dates here, are going to start appearing at the end of this month. So we have a little bit of time still. But I want to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what you can expect with this series that will run probably through the middle of July. It's going to be stuck right into the middle of the Southwestern U.S. video series. This is obviously a series I didn't plan on doing in the middle of the year, in the start of the year when we were planning my trips for the season, but this footage is too good to pass up. So I think tonight we'll show you guys what we're gonna be covering later in the month. David, you've basically been working from home, staying home as much as possible, right? You haven't done a whole lot of venturing out, I assume.
My road geeking has been restricted to what I can do coming from my apartment and don't get out of the car until I get home, basically,
Okay.
is how I've been approaching it.
Yeah, because I made sure that I had enough uh, fuel in my car to make it round trip to the city and back from Dutchess County, my point of origin. The last thing I wanted to do
Yep.
was to be in a situation where I had to refill in a hotspot area.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a hot spot and I'm not going anywhere out of the hot spot, basically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the furthest I've traveled is Riverhead. And I basically, the way I've approached it is I figured, as long as I'm in the car, I can't either contract anything or spread anything to anyone else. So that's safe. So as long as I can go from my apartment wherever I'm going and back without having to get out, then there shouldn't be any risk.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot of, differing opinions as far as what's safe and what's reasonable. Um, I'm not here to try to convince you that my way of doing it is right or anyone else's way is right, but I would say that just be smart about it.
Yep.
Do what
Yeah.
you're comfortable with doing. Do what is smart for whatever situation you find yourself in. And I do think that what I did here in the month of April does fall within those lines.
Yeah, I think as long as you're in your car and you're not getting out, then, as I was saying before, you can't contract anything and you can't spread anything to anyone else.
Yeah.
So there should be basically zero risk to doing that.
Yeah. All right. Well, So you guys are looking at my computer screen, and you can see I broke this up into two different sections. Right. We have a highways folder, and we have a local streets folder. You'll see that all the avenues are listed 1 through 12, well, except 4, and we have major cross streets, anywhere from 14th, and then even down this way in Lower Manhattan, you also have other major cross streets too. But the numbered cross streets are listed here. There's a lot of Broadway. There's a lot of Central Park stuff. What else we got? We got Park Avenue down here. So all the major streets that you would want to see footage of were covered here over the course of the last month. So that's the local street side of it. Now on the highway side of it, some of this stuff was actually going to be refilmed later this year anyway. In conjunction with the 10-year anniversary of the channel, I was going to try to freshen up some of my 5 boroughs highway coverage. So some of this stuff, like the Belt Parkway, the Bronx River, the Cross Island, these were going to be done this summer anyway. But I figured, there's probably no better opportunity to do it than now, with the traffic being what it is.
Yeah, it's a very good time to be doing that sort of stuff. I've actually done a little bit of that over the past few weeks. I got a section of the Van Wyck that I didn't have. I went and I got better pictures of the Hutch before they changed the exit numbers. Long Island Expressway heading west, went out in the morning to do that when there wouldn't be sun glare. So yeah, definitely a good time for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. So let's dive into some of this stuff. And while the video is playing, we'll have some time to chat and interact with people in the live chat, interact with David, because he's always very knowledgeable about New York City stuff. So here is 2nd Avenue. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice with most of these Avenue videos is that once I get started, I very rarely come to a stop. And I guess that's a product of there being so little traffic on these avenues at this time. But once I get started here, I'm at 109th Street where we're going to get started. And you're going to see that over the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to navigate about 110 blocks of Manhattan without coming to a stop. And it was like
Pretty incredible that actually works out.
yeah, so and it was like this for a lot of the avenues that I drove. Like First Avenue, northbound on Third, 5th, 6th, 7th, mostly 8th, mostly 9th. Like most of the avenues are synced up just like this, where if you start at, intersection A, you can go on and on for a long time before you encounter a red light.
Well, in theory, but under normal circumstances, the traffic conditions are such that in practice it doesn't really work out. But now is a whole other story.
Well, yeah, I was wondering, like, is that just a product of the traffic we're dealing with? Because
my understanding is that they're timed for people going at the speed limit.
Yeah.
And in practice, in Manhattan, unless maybe you're doing it in the middle of the night, you're not going to be able to actually move at the speed limit over such a long distance.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Because I think the way that I figured it out was, I think if you average like 27 miles an hour. If you average that, then it works out where the next light turns green at the same distance at the next block as it was at the previous block. In other words, you have to average 27 in order to maintain your space within the sequence.
That's interesting, considering that the speed limit is 25.
Yeah, so, I don't know what that tells you about city DOT, but that's kind of what it works out to be, yeah.
For those who don't know, the citywide speed limit for New York City used to be 30 miles an hour, and they lowered it to 25 with the goal of reducing accidents involving pedestrians, which probably makes sense for Manhattan, but is overkill for a lot of places in the outer boroughs. There are plenty of places on Staten Island or in Queens or places like that where there isn't really any good reason why people can't go 30 there.
Oh yeah, like a lot of Staten Island is like that. Eastern Queens especially, like over this past couple of months, I spent a lot of time in southern and eastern Queens, and I'm thinking, why is this 25? This doesn't really make a lot of sense, but
because it was set citywide, that's why.
Right, yeah.
I mean, Eastern Queens, especially northeastern Queens, is not really all that distinguishable from Long Island proper. I mean, okay, those of us who are road geeks will be able to distinguish it because the traffic lights are different and things like that. But in other respects, in terms of just what the area feels like, you look at some of those neighborhoods like Little Neck and Douglaston up there in the northeastern corner of Queens, and even if they're technically within the city, they're basically Long Island in terms of what they're like.
Yeah, that's true. Like sometimes when you cross the city line into Nassau and you're on one of those local streets, like, I don't know, Hillside Avenue or something like that, it's very hard to tell that you've actually entered Nassau County.
Well, if you know what to look for, you probably know New York State DOT traffic lights are painted this, dark greenish blackish color, whereas New York City DOT traffic lights are painted yellow. So if you're on a state route, which in most cases you probably will be, if you know to look for that, then you'll know that you've crossed the border.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't pay attention to stuff like that, so that's not, I'm not an expert at traffic signals myself. But so you haven't really ventured into the city at all since all this happened, right?
The farthest west I ventured is earlier this week. I decided it would be a good time to clinch the majority of Queens Boulevard because no traffic, So I took that west to a little after where it crosses the BQA.
And you hadn't driven the whole length of it until that point?
Yep, that's correct.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
Or is that one of those deals where you clinched it by walking it / being on a bus? You just wanted to drive it?
Queens Boulevard itself, most of it I had either walked or bussed or been in the car with someone else. Only the southeasternmost part I had never been on at all. Hillside Avenue in Queens, there was a significant portion that I hadn't done yet.
Okay.
So that's all clinched now. Yeah, if we look at the video, you'll see the Queensboro Bridge coming up on the left here where the green sign is. And even though there's no route number signage on here, that is the western terminus of New York 25, and that turns into Queens Boulevard when you get to the other side of the bridge.
That's right. Yeah, they don't do a good job of signing 25.
New York City in general doesn't really sign state routes all that well.
No, that's true.
You basically got to know the equivalent street names. Actually, it was interesting when I was on that drive the other day. You get to the point in Queens where you're on Hillside Avenue and you need to make a right turn onto Queens Boulevard, 1 block from the beginning of it, to stay on 25. And there is no signage there at all. You just got to know that you got to make that right turn if you want to stay on 25.
Okay. Yeah, you got to be a road geek to know that.
Basically, yeah. Well, I'm sure there are people who aren't road geeks who know it, but the average tourist is not going to know it. If someone saw 25 on a map and tried to follow it, then they're probably going to wind up at the point where Hillside ends at Jamaica and Myrtle Avenues before they figure out that they've done something wrong.
Yeah.
So
if they even figure it out at that point.
Right. And if they don't, then that's really not good, because that takes you in a completely different direction than following 25.
Okay, yeah.
Because 25 goes up Queens Boulevard, it goes into Manhattan, continuing through Queens. Whereas if you follow Hillside Avenue, it's like another mile or so, and then it ends at Jamaica Avenue at the point where Myrtle Avenue begins. And whether you take Jamaica Avenue or you take Myrtle Avenue, either one will take you to Brooklyn. It's just a question of what part of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So if your goal is to follow 25 into Manhattan, if you miss that turn, you're going to really wind up in the wrong place.
Yeah. I'm impressed that these Queens Midtown Tunnel signs on the left are still hanging around. Those have got to be pretty old, right?
Those have been there for as long as I've been old enough to remember.
Yeah, same here.
Those are, I mean, like when I would go into the city as a kid with my family, the times that we would drive as opposed to taking the train, I remember those signs from back when I was down in single-digit ages. I can't tell you exactly what age, but like elementary school, I remember those.
Yeah, it's got to be around that time when I first saw them myself, and I remember it's pretty damn cool 25 years ago, so they still look pretty cool today.
Yeah, those go back a long time.
Yeah. Where the hell are we? Oh, we're at 29th Street already. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. See, we're making good progress here. And the signal timing on these avenues, obviously 2nd Avenue is a one-way avenue, as are most of the avenues on Manhattan. They're one-way. but the signal timing works for whatever direction you're traveling in. So, for instance, First Avenue, which runs northbound only, you'll still have the same signal timing, even though you're going in the opposite direction.
Yeah, the catch for that is Park Avenue, which is I believe this, unless there's something I'm not thinking of, that's the only one that's two-way both ways. Oh, I'm sorry, two-way the whole length.
Yeah, Park Avenue is a little weird.
Yeah,
How they do
there's
the
Third Avenue is two-way further downtown. Broadway is two-way uptown. Amsterdam is two-way way uptown, up in my old neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have 12th Avenue and West Street. But, yeah. Like
the question is, do you count those? Because that's the West Side Highway. So.
Yeah.
But, 9A, the West Side Highway, is two-way the whole way.
Yep.
Otherwise, they would presumably not be able to put a state route on it.
Yeah, I guess. Right? Although that's always been a state highway, going back to the 30s, right?
Something like that, yeah. Although I believe there was a time when the section south of the Holland Tunnel was 27, somewhere along the way.
South of the Holland Tunnel, okay.
Yeah.
So what did 27 do?
I believe well, if you go way back, it used to start there, follow Canal Street across the Manhattan Bridge, and then make a few turns in Brooklyn to make its way onto Linden Boulevard, where it is now. There was a later point, I believe, when they ran it down West Street to the Battery Tunnel, through the tunnel, and then multiplexed it with 278 on the BQE to where it begins now at the Prospect Expressway.
Okay. Yeah, because I was wondering, like, in the pre-Battery Tunnel years, how it was getting across the East River. I didn't think it would have crossed the Brooklyn Bridge.
Manhattan Bridge.
Yeah, it would have had to be the Manhattan Bridge, right?
The Brooklyn Bridge, I don't think ever had as far as I know, it never had a state route designation on it, which makes sense because you can't take trucks over there.
Right.
Whereas there was a time when the Manhattan Bridge was 27 and the Williamsburg Bridge was 27A.
Okay.
But it goes back a long time ago.
Yeah, that's an early iteration of 27A.
Yes. Very early.
Yeah. And just like that, we're at Houston Street.
Yep.
Now,
Second Avenue turns into Christie Street there.
Yeah. Now,
that's the end of Second Avenue.
Yes. Now, I will take a second to call your attention again to these video titles. You'll notice that, unlike a video like Broadway, where I'm specifically stating what section of the street grid we're on in these videos, right? Like this one I've got highlighted is 65th Street to 42nd, right? I don't do that for these avenues, and the reason for that is there is a consistent range of the street grid that I followed for each of these avenues wherever possible. And it ranges from Houston Street in the south to 110th / Central Park North / Cathedral Parkway at the north end. Obviously with 6th and 7th Avenues that do not go all the way up to 110th Street, I'm just terminating at their northern terminus, which is at Central Park South. But for my purposes and cataloging purposes, I'm going to leave out the location specifically because I know that I'm traversing the range of Houston to 110 in each of these videos. And that's true with this video here, 12th Avenue / West Street, which is the next one we're going to watch.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah, 12th Avenue was pretty eerie, I gotta tell you.
Doing it when there was no one on there?
Yeah, like coming down... Well, I start the video a little early. Because I wanted to get the view of the hospital ship Comfort, which you can kind of see off to the... You can't really see much of it. You can see the smokestack right where my mouse cursor is.
Yeah.
See that?
So you're starting right where the Henry Hudson Parkway ends.
Yeah. This is the last 13-block section of the West Side Highway.
Yeah. Well, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there was a Henry Hudson Parkway shield there.
Yeah, we just passed one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So depending upon who you ask, this is arguably the Henry Hudson Parkway.
I think it is. It was just incorporated into it.
Right.
When the West Side was torn down. But,
yeah,
I mean, you could argue that the 59th to 72nd Street section is technically the West Side Highway, although I really won't make that argument.
Yeah. I mean, also, I guess there's the factor that with nowhere else for trucks to come from or go, it's a de facto parkway anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So... And we got everyone with their masks.
Yeah. So, for those of you who don't know, the area off to the right here, where the hospital ship Comfort is docked, or was docked until earlier this week, this was a major staging area for a lot of the relief efforts and a lot of the non-COVID patients that the city was trying to find beds for. The Comfort was used primarily for, again, non-COVID patients, so that it freed up all of the hospital beds in the existing system to be used for COVID-related purposes. So that's really why the Comfort was here. I think when they initially brought it in, they were thinking they were going to use it as a COVID facility, but they decided to transfer all the non-COVID people over to the Comfort. So that's what it was doing here. And then as the hospital capacity has increased and as the patient load has diminished in the past few weeks, the existing hospital system is now capable of handling non-COVID patients again. So they did another shuffle of people between the Comfort and the hospital system, and now the Comfort, at least at this point, is no longer needed here in New York.
Let's hope it stays that way.
Well, yeah, I hope we only needed it for that period of time.
Yeah.
Though I know that Cuomo's been talking about, New York's governor, has been talking about keeping facilities like the Javits Center that were built for, additional hospital bed capacity. He wants to keep those active as such for perhaps the foreseeable future, maybe the end of the year, depending on exactly what happens when things reopen again.
Yeah.
I don't think he's planning on opening the Javits Center to, mass gatherings anytime soon.
Which sounds wise.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing that's going to be really touch and go is how do you bring back large crowds again?
I think it's going to have to wait for a while, at least for non-essential things.
Yeah. Like, all these sports leagues, for instance, are really trying to figure out ways to get their seasons restarted, and it's really interesting to see the dynamics in play here when you think about, we know that we're not going to be able to have fans right away, but are we going to have to go an entire year without fans? Do we have to go 2 years without fans? What is acceptable to everybody?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my company has an annual conference that, well, in the past, it's taken place in June. They were originally going to move it to May this year, and then when it had to go virtual, they moved it back to June. But yeah, it's gone virtual this year, and there's no in-person gathering, not even of the employees. The employees are all giving their talks from their homes. They purchased good microphones for us to do that with. And that's how we're going to be doing it.
Well, I can hear you loud and clear, so I guess that worked.
What, the microphones?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not the microphone I'm using for this. I'm just using my webcam.
Oh, well, you should have just said it was one of those microphones you were given. I would have been like, shit, where do I get one of those?
Well, I guess the microphone on my webcam ain't so bad then.
No, it's good. I'm hearing you just fine. Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah, so as we head south here, this was all very strange to me. You know, you have the World Trade Center up ahead, and there's nobody out on the road. There's nobody on the bike path on the right.
Yeah, I mean, this is more empty than many Long Island roads are now, even.
Yeah. Yeah, this was really bizarre. I know I'll probably say that about 150 more times, but it was very strange to drive these streets that I know like the back of my hand. And I'm used to being in, bumper to bumper traffic, getting every single red light, and yet here I am. I have the whole street to myself.
Yup. It's very different. Very different from what's ordinary. So I guess it's probably worth noting that our viewers are going to be noticing in some places on here that there are exit number signs, despite the fact that this is a surface road with traffic lights. And the history there is that this was originally an elevated highway, and it wound up collapsing, and they never rebuilt it. So what they did instead was they took the surface avenue below it and converted it into this boulevard that you're seeing here. And when they did that, since the exit numbers up on the Henry Hudson Parkway used to continue what was on that elevated highway, they applied those exit numbers to some of the most major intersections on this divided highway, divided boulevard, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Now, do those exit numbers that we see today reflect what the original exit numbers were, more or less?
I would guess yes, but I don't know for sure. They're certainly done to so the exit numbers on the Henry Hudson Parkway, where they start, they're done to align with it. But certainly when you look at what those major intersections are, you could certainly imagine that those would have been where the exits would be.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like there were a lot more entrance ramps and exit ramps at some point. Maybe that this was when they first built it and maybe they eliminated some of them along the way.
Or maybe there were A's and B's on there.
Yeah, that's possible too, yeah.
Yeah.
But the section that collapsed is right around this area, isn't it?
I'm not sure, actually.
I think it's in the area of Manhattan without numbered cross streets.
Yeah.
But
the first time I was on the West Side Highway was back when it was still, after it was no longer an elevated highway, when it was a surface road.
Yeah.
Like this. I mean, I can tell you when it was. The year I was in 5th grade, we went on a class trip by bus where we went to Chinatown and Little Italy, and the bus went on West Street at one point. And that was my first time on there.
Okay.
And I remember being kind of surprised, like, wait a minute, this is the West Side Highway? I thought the West Side Highway was a highway.
Yeah. Well, it was a highway.
Yep.
Well, since we're on the subject of the West Side Highway, do we want to take a couple of minutes to talk about Westway?
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
Well, you may be more knowledgeable about that one than I am, but basically the idea is that this was supposed to be upgraded to interstate standards back in the days of Robert Moses, and the project never went through.
Yeah, so what happened was the viaduct collapsed, as we know, and as we get ready to pass One World Trade Center on the left, and we pass Battery Park City on the right.
Yeah, we're approaching the end here.
So the idea was to replace the freeway capacity that had been lost with the West Side Highway, because the highway was well beyond its age. It needed to be replaced anyway. So the idea that they came up with was a tunnel from pretty much around where the Battery Tunnel emerges, and it would have continued all the way up the west side, built out in the river as an immersed tunnel. And it would have linked in with the south end of the Henry Hudson Parkway, somewhere around 72nd Street.
Interesting. I did not realize that it was supposed to be a tunnel.
Yeah, no, this was a tunnel proposal, yeah. And it would have been out in the river. It would have not been right where we're looking right now. But the tunnel proposal met a lot of opposition from environmental groups, particularly those concerned with, there was a specific type of fish species that they were yelling about. I forget what it was, but the environmentalists took the state DOT to court, and they won. And the environmental process was therefore rejected, and the project never got off the ground. But there was a period of about 20 years or so where they were trying to replace the West Side Highway with this Westway Tunnel that would have been an interstate standard highway for the west side of Manhattan. But it, like many other proposals in Manhattan, never lived to see the light of day.
Yep. Although the one remnant of it that does exist today is that on the west side in Midtown, there is a diner that is called the Westway Diner.
That's right, yeah.
Yep.
I'm sure it was conceived around the time that there were some rumblings about a highway.
I would assume so, and I would guess that many of the people who patronize it today have no idea where the name comes from.
Yeah, probably. All right. What can I show you guys next? I think I showed you guys 6th and 7th Avenue last month.
We definitely did 6th Avenue last time.
All right. Because I remember doing at least one of them. But 7th Avenue is one of my favorite videos that I did. So if I already did it, well, we're going to do it again because it's a cool video. But yeah, a lot of really interesting stuff about the West Side Highway and what was proposed to follow it and what ended up following it in the end.
Yeah.
So this is 7th Avenue, and of course, since we are right smack in the middle of Central Park, 7th Avenue doesn't begin until Central Park South, which is 59th Street. So we have a much shorter distance that we have to travel for this video. But you do get your money's worth here as we're about to pass through Times Square.
Yup. The 6th and 7th both end at Central Park, that there's a segment there between 59th and 110th, aka Central Park South and Central Park North, respectively, that just doesn't exist. And they restart on the other side of the park with different names.
Right, so that the grid resumes as it was south of the park on the north side, but
yes, but the names are changed.
Yeah, different names for the avenues, right?
Yeah, so 7th Avenue is Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Boulevard, and 6th Avenue is, alternatively, it's either Lenox Avenue or Malcolm X Boulevard. Those are two names for the same street.
Yeah, I think Lenox Avenue is the historic name, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Going way back.
Yep. And it was given an additional name.
Yeah.
More recently.
And then 8th Avenue, which becomes Central Park West.
Yep.
Once you get north of the park, it becomes Frederick Douglass Boulevard.
That is correct. And that intersection is 2 blocks away from where I used to live.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. I used to walk through that circle all the time.
Was that always a circle there?
As long as I was living there, it was, yes.
Because it does look relatively new. I don't know if there was something else there before.
I mean, I can't attest to what was there, back in the 90s or early 2000s, but I moved in there in 2010, and as of when I moved in, that was a circle.
Okay. Yep, so again, we return to the major one-directional avenues, and the light sequencing remains the same. You're getting 100 blocks worth of green lights without trying too hard.
Yep.
We just passed Madison Square Garden a few blocks ago.
And before that, Times Square, which you probably didn't even recognize given how empty it is now.
No, I know that when I drove through it, it was very disorienting because I'm used to seeing wads of people everywhere.
Yup.
But Times Square just looks like another city block, It all looks the same now.
Yep. I had a similar thing when last Saturday I decided it would be a good time to go experience the Cross Bronx with no traffic on it, because it's probably the only time in my life I'll ever get to experience that. So I merge on and don't even recognize it.
Yeah, I know.
Same sort of thing. If only they could keep it moving that smoothly under normal circumstances.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my thought in terms of how you fix the Cross Bronx is that they would have to double deck it, because there's no other way they could widen it through there, and it's not meeting it doesn't have the capacity for what it carries today.
Right, yeah.
So if you had, maybe an upper deck that was express, where, let's say, it went from the Deegan to the Throgs Neck and the Whitestone with no exits, and all the local traffic for places in the Bronx had to go on the lower deck, and people who were going between Manhattan or New Jersey and one of those 2 bridges or points north could take the upper deck.
I mean, in theory, it makes sense, and it
Yeah.
works. Yeah. The thing
Good
that
luck getting anything built, though.
Yeah, well, the thing that I think about is you used to have, before 9/11, you used to be able to put trucks on the lower level outbound. Mm-hmm. And when they banned trucks from the lower level, that meant that all the truck traffic coming from the Deegan had to quickly merge over 2 or 3 lanes to the left to get to the upper level ramps. And I gotta think that traffic at that point has gotten a heck of a lot worse since they did that.
That's probably true. The thing is, though, you go on the northbound Cross Bronx, let's say between the Deegan and the Bruckner interchange, where you get the Throgs Neck or the Whitestone. That's still a parking lot there. So I don't think you can explain that piece just by trucks not being able to be on the lower level.
Yeah, but I do think that there's a basic geometrical problem there, that if you were able to do a couple of things with that interchange, you could definitely help things. I don't think you would solve it, but
right.
I do think you would improve the flow significantly.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think that makes sense in theory also. Because if you think about traffic on the GW, all the inbound traffic hits a natural speed bump before it crosses the bridge, and that is the toll plaza.
for now.
Well, yeah, that's true. We'll have to see how that changes going forward. But
because I was going to say, in my in my experience, the bridge does not have the kind of traffic disaster on it that the Cross Bronx does.
No, I would say that you're more likely to find significant delays going outbound than you are inbound.
On the bridge?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, I think so.
I don't recall having had that problem, but I don't think I've ever tried to do it during rush hour, for whatever that's worth.
Well, I haven't either, and I've done that on purpose. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, because all the outbound traffic doesn't have a real orderly way of getting on the bridge. It's just this free-for-all of all these highways coming together.
Yeah.
Whereas on the inbound side, yes, you have a bunch of highways coming together, but you have an orderly procession leading away from the toll plaza. And unless there's some sort of major incident under the apartments, which happens every day anyway, but on the occasions when it doesn't happen, I would think that navigating that stretch is easier if you're going inbound versus outbound. That's kind of my observation.
Wait, are you talking about the bridge itself or the Cross Bronx approaching it?
I'm talking about the bridge plus the Trans-Manhattan / well, really, you can include the Cross Bronx in there too, because the eastbound Cross Bronx doesn't jam up the way that the westbound side does.
I've seen both of them be a parking lot. I mean, my experience with the westbound Cross Bronx is that usually that's a parking lot until you get to the bridge, and then when you get to the bridge it opens up, which kind of makes sense because you've got upper and lower levels, so you got twice as many lanes.
Right, and you're past the big merge points at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, so it would make sense that the bridge would ease up at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But also, more often than not, the eastbound Cross Bronx moves way better than the westbound side.
I guess I could see that. I'm thinking about the last time that I came back from Pennsylvania that way. That day it wound up that there was an accident on the eastbound Cross Bronx where they had to narrow it down to one lane. Ooh. So that day it was certainly a parking lot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you get an incident anywhere in there, then forget it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. In terms of what'll happen with cashless tolling, I will say that it's interesting looking at how that has changed things with the Throgsneck, because it used to be you had the Cross Bronx Expressway 295 and the Throgsneck Expressway 695, 3 lanes of each that came into the toll plaza. And then you would go through the toll plaza and get onto the bridge. Now the toll plaza is gone. So you've got those 2 pairs of 3 lanes merging down to 3 lanes on the bridge. So that is now a choke point that it hadn't really been before.
Right, because again, it goes back to the artificial speed bump, right?
Right. Yeah. And if at some point the Throgsneck Bridge gets replaced, I would assume that they'll probably take it up to 4 lanes, which would fix that problem because, well, you've got the 3 and 3, so if each of them merges down to 2 right before they merge together, then, well, you've just got 2 and 2 coming together to make 4, so that's fine. And then on the other side, you've got the 3 split into 2 and 2 for the Clearview and the Cross Island ramp. And then the 2 for the Clearview immediately widen to 3, so you could just have it split into 3 and 2 instead of 2 and 2.
Yeah.
So that would work fine. So that would be very conducive to widening the bridge to 4 lanes. Now, I assume, given the relative ages of the various bridges, that's probably going to be one of the later ones to come up for replacement, most likely.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. But even with the Whitestone, I could see how that could benefit from going from 3 to 4.
Well, you could add a lane on any of these bridges, frankly.
Right, but in terms of what's merging together,
oh, I see what you're
saying. Various
okay.
on either side,
yeah.
There's certainly plenty of where to go for those vehicles when they get to either side.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying when you say it like that. Yeah. I mean, obviously all these bridges are placed at major merge points in the system.
Right.
So it would make sense to build these bridges with the extra lane there for the merge purpose, even if that lane then exits again on the other side.
Right.
Yeah. But what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, so getting back to the GW. By the way, we're on Lexington Avenue, for your information. You bring up the cashless tolling situation and what that might do, and the first thing that I thought about was something similar to what they're doing out in San Francisco with the Bay Bridge. I don't know if you're familiar with the ramp metering that's on steroids out there.
No.
So you know what ramp metering is.
Oh yeah, we have it at all the entrances on Long Island here.
Okay, so imagine taking that and putting it across a 12-lane toll plaza, and then metering and regulating the number of cars that get to enter the bridge from the Oakland side going into San Francisco. Now, the theory behind it is that you're limiting the amount of cars that enter San Francisco at one particular time, so that you avoid these big rushes of cars that'll jam up not just the bridge, but also the street grid beyond it. So they've been implementing what they call a mainline metering system, where you go through the toll plaza like usual, but then once you get beyond it, there's this giant overhead gantry with, like all these traffic signals, like what we're seeing right now, except there's like 20 lanes of them. And it literally will flash green for one signal per green, or one car per green, and it'll restrict the amount of traffic that gets to enter the bridge and therefore enter San Francisco. Now, it does have the drawback of dumping all the backups into Oakland, which,
right.
I mean, it's Oakland. No one gives a shit about Oakland. The point that I'm about to make is I wonder if we might see something like that at some point at these Hudson River crossings with cashless tolling coming online.
That would be interesting.
Because the idea of it does make sense. You do want to keep the amount of cars entering Manhattan at a given time steady. You want to keep the rate as close to flat line as possible.
The thing is, though, is it kosher to do that on an interstate? I would think not.
Well, Caltrans apparently thinks it is.
Okay, interesting.
So, I mean, the Bay Bridge is 80, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting traffic control system that I don't think is in use anywhere else in North America.
Yeah.
But I wonder if we might see something like that.
You think for the George or just for the Lincoln and the Holland?
I think for all three.
Interesting.
Well, maybe less so for the Holland, because you already have traffic.
You have traffic lights there already.
As an artificial speed bump, right? We're coming back to the speed bump idea.
Yep.
So if you're coming off a limited access highway, you're used to going through a toll plaza, which is your speed bump. Now, if you eliminate the speed bump, you can get these big waves of cars going through at once, unimpeded. So what does that do downstream? Well, it blocks up all the streets downstream, and you're totally screwed as far as being able to get anybody through there in a hurry, right? So the idea behind metering is flatten the curve, right? You're basically taking that amount of cars and you're spreading it out over a longer interval so that you can accommodate more vehicles over the course of a given period of time.
Right.
See that? We're introducing, COVID terms to traffic management,
I guess we are.
But you see what I'm saying, though? Like, the concept is actually pretty similar.
Yeah, definitely it makes sense. The question is, you wind up with this big backup onto the turnpike and maybe even all the way back to 80.
Right, and then the question becomes, how big are your backups in Jersey? And, what are you able to stomach as far as that's concerned? But, I do think it's going to be something they look into, and it would not surprise me one bit if they implement it.
I wonder how you would sign that so that motorists who have never seen that sort of thing before know what to do.
I don't think, I'm trying to remember what they do in San Francisco, but I don't think they do anything beyond the standard, well, they don't put ramp metering. They don't use that exact word, but...
Well, I think most motorists wouldn't know what that term means.
Right, yeah. I don't know what the education level is for people in Rockland and Westchester who are seeing ramp metering on 287 for the first time, for instance.
Yeah.
I don't know what... I'm not sure how it's taking hold over there, for instance. Let's do a couple cross streets real quick. The ones that go across Central Park are pretty interesting. But yeah, so, as with anything else that's new, there's a learning curve involved. And obviously you'd have to have a lot of people on the same page in order to implement it correctly. But, I'm really interested to see how, the traffic patterns and the traffic modeling changes with the removal of these toll plazas in a couple years.
Yeah. Certainly going to be different.
Yeah. So, Central Park, let's talk a little bit about the park while we're on 79th Street. There are 4 streets that go across the park, or 5?
4 or 5, depending upon how you count it.
Yeah, because there's 65th, which is there's 65th, 79th, 86th, 96th.
Arguably 72nd.
Yeah, that's the other one.
Yeah.
Right? And the 72nd one is...
Oh, this is interesting. They replaced that oversized street name sign there, and it looks very different than it used to.
Oh, the West End Avenue one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured you would probably pick up on some of the new stuff around here.
Yeah, I guess sometime when things get better, I'll need to take a ride up to that neighborhood and photograph that.
Yeah,
that is not what they typically look like in New York City, unless they're introducing a new style.
No, this is very different.
Yeah.
What the hell kind of font is that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, because then you get to the next intersection here with Broadway, and then you're back to the standard nameplate.
Yep. This is the terminology that's used by New York City DOT is they call them oversized street name signs, or OSNS for short.
Okay.
And they only have them on the most major roads within each borough. If you're on, some little back street where, it crosses some other street that's not major enough to have them, there will not be those signs at the traffic light.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're on one of those streets, you'll have them. Like, here's whatever the hell street this is.
We just turned onto, we should just talk about what we're doing here, that we just turned onto Amsterdam Avenue and why we did that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
79th Street has a break in it between, so Amsterdam Avenue is 10th Avenue. And 9th is Columbus. Between Columbus and Central Park West, which is where 8th would be, there are actually a number of streets that are missing. It skips from 77th to 81st, and the reason why is that big block there is home to the American Museum of Natural History. So those streets were all removed to make room for that. So what they did is the transverse across Central Park coming from East 79th Street doesn't align with West 79th Street. It aligns with West 81st Street. And there is a one-block section of West 81st Street that is two-way, which you see straight ahead right there that we're about to go on to.
Yep.
And when you come across, going in the other direction, heading east, you find yourself on that one block. Then you're forced to turn onto Columbus Avenue. And then Columbus Avenue, which at least for now is for whatever reason not considered major enough to have oversized street name signs, they installed one of them at West 79th Street where it begins again, so that people who are following 79th know that they need to turn there.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So that's the one location they decided to stick one.
On Columbus Avenue, yeah.
Huh, okay.
So the other factor that's in terms of oversized street name signs. Well, actually, before we get there, let's just finish explaining what you were doing back there. Because Columbus Avenue is one way south, you can't follow it that way when going in this direction. So what you have to do instead is you have to turn north onto Amsterdam, because that's one way in the opposite direction. And then you follow 81st along the little one-way section of it for one block to get to that two-way block.
Yeah.
Anyway, about the oversized street name signs. When they first installed them in Manhattan, they only did streets and not avenues. And actually, as of when I moved into Manhattan in 2010, it was still just streets and no avenues, and that was it. They've gradually added them to some of the avenues later on. First they did first and second, then I'm trying to think, did they do Broadway first or third first? Anyway, they covered both of those. And more recently they've done Park, they've done Amsterdam, but not 10th that Amsterdam turns into below 59th, just Amsterdam from 59th north. And very recently they added 6th.
Okay.
But there's still nothing on Lexington, Madison, 5th. You'd think 5th would be considered major. I mean, it's one of the most famous streets in New York City.
Right.
But no. 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, where it's actually called 10th rather than Amsterdam, or 11th. So most of them are still missing it. Which is kind of messed up in my opinion. I don't see why Manhattan's avenues shouldn't be toward the top of the list of streets to get that treatment.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when you consider the fact that the avenues are the main streets.
Right.
So, I don't know.
And it's not just for people who are driving that they're useful. If you're riding along on a bus, then it makes it much easier to know what you're crossing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because so many of these blocks they all look the same. They're all so monotonous.
Yeah, so if you're, riding up, well now they have them on Broadway, which is Very nice. But it used to be that if you were taking the bus off Broadway and you were looking for, I don't know, I want to get off the bus at 87th Street, let's say. You would have to look at those little street sign blades as the bus went across each street to know where you were.
Right.
Whereas having it overhead where, it's large and prominent makes it much easier to navigate, as someone using transit or a pedestrian also.
No, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, because you don't think about them benefiting, like the bus drivers and the bike riders and all that stuff. But yeah, they all benefit the same group of people.
Yeah, I mean the only case, Manhattan is very multimodal in terms of transportation, but really the only case where people wouldn't benefit from it is if they're down in the subway.
Right, yeah.
I see you're going over to highways now.
Yeah, let's go over to the highway folder now. I think you guys got the idea of the street grid.
Oh, that sign got replaced.
Yeah, well, I figured you'll probably be able to figure out not only where we are, but which signs have been replaced along here.
Oh, I know where this is very well.
I'm sure you do.
This is very much my neck of the woods.
That's right.
So we are getting on to the Long Island Expressway at Lakeville Road, coming off the service road there from Lakeville Road, which for anyone who cares about the secret county routes of Nassau County is CR11, and that is the last exit going this way in Nassau County. And we are now coming into Queens, where there's one exit for Little Neck Parkway and Douglaston Parkway before we hit the Cross Island Parkway.
Where's the traffic?
Oh yeah, I should also specify for people who don't know the area, the Cross Island Parkway is actually a parkway. Little Neck Parkway and Douglaston Parkway are streets in Queens that simply happen to be called parkways.
Yeah.
Although the one thing they do have in common with parkways is that they ban trucks from them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Also, Utopia Parkway that will pass a little bit further up. That's the same situation there.
Yeah.
People who are not road geeks also like to make fun of that one and say, oh, Utopia Parkway is an oxymoron.
Yeah. So this is the infamous Long Island Expressway through Queens. Usually on a Saturday afternoon in the springtime. If you want to try to navigate this without traffic, you're basically out of luck. But, because nobody's out on the highway, you have clear sailing in front of you.
And as you'll see, when you do this with no traffic, it is a very quick ride.
Oh, yes. It's really, like, doing this series, it's really made me realize that, New York City's really not that big. Like, you can get, this never really happens, but in a vacuum with no traffic, you can get from one side of the city limit all the way to the other in a relatively short amount of time.
Yeah, well, the 5 boroughs of New York City are the 5 smallest counties geographically in New York State.
Yeah, yep, that makes sense.
They're also 5 of the largest in terms of population.
Yeah, you've got 8.5 million people in those 5 counties.
Right. I think Staten Island is the only one that wouldn't rank in the top 5 for population.
Yeah, I could see that.
I believe Staten Island has a smaller population than Nassau and Suffolk, but it's geographically smaller also.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. Staten Island's only got like 500,000 people, I think.
Yeah, whereas Nassau has 1.3 million and Suffolk, I think maybe like 1.1 million or something like that.
Yeah, because
it's a little bit smaller population-wise, but several times the size geographically.
Yeah, and I think the other 4 boroughs are about 2 million apiece on average.
Well, Manhattan is 1.5 million. Brooklyn and Queens, I think, are somewhere around 2 million.
Yeah, that makes sense that Brooklyn and Queens would be the largest.
Yeah. Queens is the largest geographically, and I believe also in terms of population.
Yeah.
But actually, here's a trick question for you. What's the largest borough geographically?
Geographically the largest? I mean, I would have said Queens.
Actually, the correct answer is North Slope Borough, Alaska.
All right, so
I didn't say the largest borough in New York City. I just said the largest borough.
Ah, come on. That's cheating. That's not cool. Yeah,
that's why it's a trick question.
Yeah, you and your trick questions. Yeah, great.
It's not only larger than all of the boroughs of New York City combined, it's several times the size of New York State.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
It's bigger than any of the other states except I think like California, Texas, and Montana, and that's it.
Okay.
It's huge. Yet there's only one road in the whole place.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's so huge that even Donald Trump can't handle it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, great. Yeah. That's wonderful. Is it
since you were saying it with that kind of intonation, I had to make the Trump joke.
I'm sure. Yeah, well, that's fair. Is that one road part of the Alaskan highway system?
It's the Dalton Highway, which is Alaska State Route 11.
Okay. Yeah.
And it takes you to the northernmost point that you can drive to in North America.
Well, I have not done that, but I know certain people watching this who have.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet either, but at some point I feel like it would be fun.
Dude, you haven't even been to California yet.
Yeah, I know.
Talking about, like, Alaska. Like, get out of here with that. I gotta get you on a plane so you can visit Arizona or something like that. Some cool place like that.
Yeah, or Hawaii.
Yeah. So usually am I right in assuming that the most traditional choke point on the LIE is right around here? Like around the Queens Boulevard junction?
Yeah, it can back up here. It can back up. You go a little further back where there's the Grand Central and the Van Wyck right next to each other. That's a point where you can get a lot of traffic.
Okay.
I mean, if traffic's bad, the whole thing can be backed up. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, with the highway that normally carries the amount of traffic that the LIE does, it doesn't take very much to totally F things up all the way down the line.
Yeah, I mean, if you try to do this normally during rush hour, this would probably be bumper to bumper from the tunnel all the way out on Long Island somewhere.
Yeah, if we were trying to do this on a morning rush hour, like do this drive right now, we'd still be back at the Cross Island Parkway, probably.
Probably, yeah. I mean, like, when I do day trips on Long Island, that actually works nicely because it's a reverse commute. So there was one time, I wasn't doing the expressway, I was doing the Northern State Parkway. And the traffic was backed up so I was going west during the evening rush hour when the peak direction was going east. So I could just sail along, but I could see what traffic looked like on the other side. And not only was it backed up all the way to the end of the parkway, it was backed up so the parkway turns into 347 when you get to the end of it. And it was backed up all the way along 347, all the way out to Port Jefferson.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's a major league backup.
That it is. Yeah, so the moral of the story is if you're coming from Long Island and you need to commute into Manhattan, take the train if you can.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know that if I ever had to report to a location in Manhattan, that's what I would have done.
Yeah. Much better experience.
Yep.
If that's the type of commute you're doing.
Yeah.
Which under normal circumstances is the commute that I do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know you know this, but for anyone who's watching who isn't familiar with, my situation, I live in Mineola, which is basically right in the middle of Nassau County, and I get on LIRR in the morning. My apartment is about a 5-minute walk away from the station, and I get on LIRR, and in 35 minutes I'm in Penn Station. Whereas if you tried to drive that, it would be at least twice as long, probably longer.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know people, when I worked down in Ozone Park, I know people who were commuting from the same general area of Nassau as you, and it was taking them an hour and change at 6:30 in the morning just to get as far as Ozone Park.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Here's a question for you as we prepare to enter the Midtown Tunnel. What would you say is the best view of Manhattan? Like, if you're approaching it from a major highway. Is it this view that we're going to get? Or
this is a good one. There are a couple of others I'm thinking of as well. If you're coming down the BQE from the north heading into Brooklyn, there is a very good view right after the exit for the LIA on there. Well, actually, I just noticed in the chat, Scott mentioned one of the others that I was going to bring up later, which is Route 3 in New Jersey. So there's that one. But anyway, on the BQE there, and also if you're so this here has changed since the last time I was through here because they're now forcing all the trucks into one lane.
Okay.
Which was not the case the last time that I was through here. It used to be that it was 3 lanes to a toll plaza, and yeah.
So you haven't been through here since they did the cashless?
I have been through here once or twice since they did the cashless, but they hadn't put this truck inspection in yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the BQE, and also if you take the exit from the BQE to the LIA, on the westbound side of the BQE, there's a very good view from that ramp as well.
Yeah. Yeah, there are quite a few good ones sprinkled
around.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you want to get off, there's also, if you get off the last exit on the LIE before you would go into the tunnel, the service road down there turns into Borden Avenue in Queens, and if you just take that to the end, it ends by the river there, and there's a park, and if you go to that park, there's very good views from there as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
They actually, under normal circumstances, my company has an annual picnic in that park every year.
Okay.
Williamsburg.
Yeah, so I basically filmed all the bridges again as part of this.
Yep.
So I'll show you this trip, starting at Queens Boulevard on the BQE and going into Lower Manhattan via the Williamsburg Bridge. Again, I have to stress that the BQE is one of the more crowded highways in the city. I mean, they're all pretty damn crowded, but not right now, though.
Nope. There was actually at one point, back when I was a kid, there was a thing in the AAA magazine about the 4 most scenic drives in New York State. And one of the things they had listed in there was the BQE. And they said, people don't generally think of this as being a scenic road, but it's actually got some of the best views of the New York City skyline. And the traffic jams, the chronic traffic jams on there will give you plenty of time to look at it.
That's true. Yeah. Like these views right now.
Yeah.
Sure.
So this is the area I was talking about when I said, coming into Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Earlier.
This ain't a bad view either.
Yeah. So, and now we're going on to the Kosciuszko Bridge, which was very recently replaced.
What do you think about the new bridge?
I like it.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I got to walk the pedestrian path the day before they opened it to traffic.
Yeah, this one I still haven't walked yet. I should go do that sometime.
Yeah, well, we're talking about views of Manhattan, right? Well, you get some dynamite views from that bridge.
I would think so, yeah. I've walked the Pulaski Bridge, which is another fun one to walk over.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that one. Should probably explain what it is for viewers who may not be familiar with it anyway.
Okay, yeah, I've driven it before, but I've never actually spent a lot of time around it.
Yeah, so the Kosciuszko Bridge that we just went over takes you over Newtown Creek between Brooklyn and Queens. Right next to it to the west, there's another bridge called the Pulaski Bridge. The theme seems to be that the bridges over Newtown Creek get Polish names.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So there's the Pulaski Bridge on the other side, to the west, and that connects to the local streets. It's not on one of the highways. Although there is an exit that is marked for it on the LIE, eastbound only, right after you come out of the tunnel, the first exit.
Right, yeah, where the Pulaski Bridge comes in, it's right above, more or less, where the toll plaza was.
Yes. It used to be that when there was a toll plaza, the first sign for that exit was actually before the toll plaza, telling people, take that rightmost toll lane if you want to get off that exit, because it's right there.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah.
Hey, there's a wrong I-278 sign.
Yes, that is wrong.
That is very wrong.
Also something to sort of, we'll see if people find this funny or not, but don't take Pulaski Road to get to the Pulaski Bridge, because it won't take you there.
I'd laugh, but I don't understand the joke.
Pulaski Road is Suffolk County Route 11.
Oh, okay.
It starts at the southern terminus of 108 by the Nassau-Suffolk border and goes east to Kings Park, where it ends at 25A. So it doesn't take you anywhere near the Pulaski Bridge.
Well, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so.
So, Williamsburg Bridge has inner roadways and outer roadways, and it has subway tracks right in the middle of that.
Yep.
So we're on the very claustrophobic inner roadway. Yeah,
so the Williamsburg Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge both have subway tracks on them. But the Brooklyn Bridge does not.
Right.
What the Brooklyn Bridge has instead is its upper level is pedestrians and bikes only. So if you want to walk over one of these bridges, that's a very good one to do.
Well, the problem is that everybody wants to go there because they know that.
Yeah, that's true. It can get very crowded there.
Yeah. So what I've actually started to do and recently is I get off the subway like a couple stops before I walk across the Manhattan Bridge, and I can make the same basic subway connections that I want to make. It's a little more out of the way to do it via the Manhattan Bridge, but I like the Manhattan better anyway because there's nobody on it. And the view of Manhattan is a heck of a lot better too. So that's usually.
Wait, did you just go through a red light with a cop right there on the right side?
Oh, I don't know. I do all sorts of weird shit.
That's pretty incredible that you just got away with that.
Well, you know, he must have seen my bumper stickers and was like, "Okay, this guy's cool. He's got a YouTube channel." All right. Let's do this video here.
Verrazano, that's another fun one.
Hey, the Verrazano, but it's only got one Z on its name.
For now.
For now.
It's changing. We'll see how long it takes them to actually change it.
Well, I heard that with the changing of the signs, it was going to occur whenever the signage was due for replacement. So that might be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you know. So,
I mean, like, you look at the Tri-Bird RFK renaming, and that one has been, at this point, it's been almost 12 years. And at this point, most of them have finally gotten replaced, but you'll still see Tri-Borough signs in some places.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially signs that look relatively new, so I assume that those are signs that were put up like right before they changed it.
It may not have necessarily been right before. It may have been, 5 years before or something that, but it wasn't a long time before.
Right, so you're not going to replace a perfectly good 5-year-old sign.
Right.
So you're just going to leave it for, a bunch of years until it's actually due to be replaced.
Yeah. There's, on the connector between the Whitestone Expressway and the Grand Central, I believe those signs there have not been replaced and they still say Tri-Borough.
Oh, those, the ones, yeah, those are ancient signs there. They still
not anymore.
Those.
No, those aren't ancient.
Which ones are you talking about? On the
You're thinking of the sign that had for Astoria Boulevard that had the blank space at the top to leave room for an interstate shield if it got converted into an expressway?
I'm talking about like northbound on the Van Wyck.
Oh no, I was talking about if you're going southbound on the Whitestone, where the Van Wyck begins, there's exits 13, A through D, I think it is there.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, and it's this long ramp that was originally supposed to be the beginning of converting Astoria Boulevard into an expressway.
Yeah, well, that was where I-678 was supposed to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the signs on there, they were replaced not that long before the renaming, and they still say Tri-Borough.
Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, you're right. Those have not been replaced.
Yep.
Yeah, so it really depends. Like, a lot of the signs are due to be replaced at the times of these renamings, and so they do it right then and there. Others, you still get a few oddballs many years later.
What was kind of crazy, though, is with the Tri-Bird RFK one, most of the signs on the approaches to the bridge still said Tri-Borough for close to a decade after.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Because when was the renaming done? Like 2006?
2008.
2008, okay.
So the renaming was in 2008. I moved out of Manhattan at the beginning of 2018, so 10 years later.
Yeah.
And there were signs on the approach there that did not get replaced until shortly after I moved out.
And those are signs that are on TBTA right-of-way?
I'm not sure whether that's TBTA or whether it's New York State or New York City DOT there.
Yeah, because that might influence the reasoning behind it.
Yeah. But nonetheless, you'd think if they wanted people to actually start using the new name, you'd think that they would deal with it at least there. I mean, the fact that there are, entrances to the Grand Central that still list Triborough Bridge as a control city, okay, can deal with that. But the fact that you're literally at the bridge and the sign still has the old name.
Yeah, I don't think any of that is still existent.
If there is, it's very little of it.
Well, at least at the bridge, I think they finished doing the switch over there.
Yeah.
But yes, as you get further and further out, you do have still some old stuff still hanging around.
Yeah.
Speaking of renamings, we passed a sign a short distance ago that says that it's not the Battery Tunnel anymore. Capiche? So
officially, it is not. That, in my opinion, that was the worst thing for them to rename, because with the others, at least there's a route number. So that at least stays the same. Whereas here, it's 478, but 478 is unsigned. So the name is the only thing to guide motorists to it.
Right.
So if you don't know that it's been renamed, then, that's not going to be good.
Was I-478 ever signed?
I don't think so. Certainly not in my lifetime.
Yeah. I don't remember seeing it signed either, but I always remember as a kid seeing it on a map. Like
there were, I think, some old AAA maps that used to show it and stuff like that. They also used to show the Nassau Expressway as Interstate 878.
Okay, yeah.
Which it was at one point signed as, but again, not within my lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, because I just remember seeing the 478 for the Battery Tunnel.
Yeah.
As a real youngster.
As far as I know, that was never signed.
Okay.
Originally, when they were proposing 78 across Manhattan, 78 would have taken the Williamsburg Bridge. 478 was supposed to split off from it, go down across the Manhattan Bridge, and then end at 278, the BQE, on the other side.
Yeah. Well, I can guarantee you that they would have signed I-478 if they had built Westway.
Yes, that they would have. But, if they had built that, it would have been signed as 478 also.
Yep.
That one, actually, there's a document that I've got on my site with, it's an official log of state routes from 1970, and it's there on the log. It's listed on the log along stuff that was never built, but nonetheless, it's there.
Okay. But yeah, this is usually a traffic nightmare through here.
Oh, yeah.
The Gowanus is synonymous with suffering and chronic, bumper-to-bumper traffic. But
there's also the Gowanus Canal, which is a super fun site.
Yeah.
So no one has particularly good thoughts come to mind when they hear the name Gowanus.
No, that's true.
So either it's the section of the expressway that gets constantly backed up, or it's this canal where you don't want to touch the water on it if you don't want to get poisoned. So...
yeah.
But yeah, so we're going to be coming up soon on one of the interesting sections of the BQE, where you've got the Brooklyn Heights Promenade that runs on top. Well, the expressway is double decked, and then you've got the Brooklyn Heights Promenade running on top of it.
Yeah, so we're on the upper level here.
Yes.
And then, well, actually, we're on the middle level, because you've got the Promenade on the top level.
Correct.
And then
which you're going to see on the right here.
Yep. And then the other direction of the other direction of the expressway is beneath us.
Yes.
And this is the section that's gotten a lot of publicity lately because it's falling apart.
And I'm sure that the coronavirus situation is not going to help that get fixed anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree.
So who knows when this gets dealt with.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who have been talking about eliminating it altogether, which I think would be an absolute disaster.
Well, it would be asinine.
I mean, it's a traffic nightmare as it is. You go and take all this traffic and throw it onto the local streets. Yeah. I mean, it would be a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, you're basically severing the only artery, or the most reliable artery, to get you through Western Brooklyn.
Right. And it's not even, I mean, the truck traffic that uses it, they don't have the option of taking the belt. So where are they going to go? Yeah. They're going to go on the Cross Bronx? I mean, that's really got extra capacity on it.
Oh, I know, yeah. Yeah, so by shutting down, this is a nice view, by shutting down the BQE, you would be causing ripples all over the damn place on highways that can't afford to take more traffic as it is.
Yup.
So.
Makes no sense.
I agree.
I mean, the Sheridan conversion, that one works because the Sheridan was basically a highway from nowhere to nowhere, where the only people who used it were trucks going to Hunts Point.
Yeah.
So there was hardly any traffic on it to begin with, so that was fine. But taking something that's a major artery and forcing it onto the local streets, just why would you do that?
Yeah, I hear you. It makes no damn sense to me. But, all right, so we're back in Manhattan.
Yep.
We got Speed Racer who just went past me. That's the other thing that I keep hearing on the news. Like, because the highways are so empty, like they're actually seeing somewhat of an increase in like traffic crashes due to speed on the highways because there's nobody out. So everybody feels like, ooh, let me do 80 on the BQE. That sounds like a great idea.
I've seen other types of bad driving as well. I've seen people who think that because there's no traffic when they're pulling out of a driveway or a side street or whatever, that they don't need to look anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Which is kind of a recipe for an accident.
Yeah.
So, or an entrance ramp.
Yeah, people are just driving worse in general, I think. I don't know exactly what the reason for that is.
Yeah.
It's not just that people are driving faster. They're just bad, like they're less attentive than they've ever been.
They think they can do whatever they want to do because there are fewer people out on the roads, I guess.
Yeah. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't understand that thought process, but
the when I was on the Cross Bronx, there was someone coming out at one of these substandard entrance ramps that has a yield sign at the end. And I had to honk at this person because it did not look like they were prepared to yield.
Yeah.
So.
Well, half of drivers don't even know what the hell a yield sign is.
That may be. I have to say, the section of the Cross Island between the Throgs Neck and the Whitestone, you've got a couple of those types of entrance ramps there as well. And people come down those ramps too fast, not prepared to yield.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to watch out and make sure you're careful.
Yeah, because I think
over there,
some of those ramps that you're talking about actually have stop signs on them.
Well, those have yield signs. There are others that have stop signs as well.
Yeah, I know there are a few in that area. I know the stretch you're talking about. I always stay out of the right lane when I'm going through there.
Yeah.
You can't rely on the person merging in to know what he's supposed to do.
Right. The entrance ramp from Northern Boulevard onto the Cross Island going north, there's a stop sign at the end of that ramp. And you're merging on with no acceleration lane where there is a railroad overpass right ahead, so it's not like they could widen the road even if they wanted to.
Yeah, right.
Not easily, at least. So, yeah, long story short, it's kind of a disaster interchange there.
Yeah.
Then there's also the entrance ramp onto the BQE from Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. That one's also got a stop sign at the end, and it's a disaster.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yep.
That's true.
Yeah, so this is what it was like when I merged onto the Cross Bronx last weekend.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even realize it was the same thing.
I know, yeah.
Although, interestingly, when I was on there, they'll see if you run into the same thing. It was not completely traffic-free because they were doing construction further up where they had it narrowed down to one lane in one spot.
Oh, okay. Well,
so that actually did back it up a little bit. But it was still much faster than it would normally be trying to get across the Cross Bronx.
Yeah. Well, I think that with that construction project you're alluding to, they're taking the opportunity with the low amount of traffic to do a lot of other stuff.
That may be. It certainly makes sense.
Yeah. Like I know they were repaving the eastbound lanes not long ago.
This was on the westbound side, but it looked like it was a repaving job. Yeah.
So they were doing something like that. And then I know for the GW project, they're closing lanes more liberally, I'd say.
Yeah.
Related to that.
What are they doing with the George?
So they have to shut lanes down in order to allow access to the suspender rope replacement project that's ongoing.
Okay, so they're rehabilitating the bridge. Got it.
Yeah, like I think there are as many as 10 different contracts for that thing that'll be executed over the next dozen years. And what you're seeing...
It's going to take a while.
Yeah, so what you're seeing right now is they're replacing all the suspenders. That's why they have all the catwalks up, and that's what all the activity is on the north side of the deck.
Yeah.
And then when they swing around to do the suspenders on the south side, they're first going to have to relocate the pedestrian and bike access to the north side of the deck from the south side, so that they can close that side down to do the suspender ropes on that side of the bridge.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the scope of work is not astronomical, but because of the traffic management part of it, it's going to take forever.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. Yeah, I have to say, I mean, the Cross Bronx is kind of a cool highway, except that under normal circumstances, it's a disaster to drive on because it's always a parking lot.
Yeah, you never have this much fun.
No.
On this highway.
Not under normal circumstances.
No.
So. And then, of course, this sign had to get horribly vandalized.
Yeah. The Cross Bronx really isn't that long if you think about it. But because...
Oh, it's incredibly short.
But because you're always in bumper-to-bumper traffic from the Bruckner all the way to the Deegan, it feels like it goes on forever. But it's really not that long.
Yep. I mean, think about it this way. You get on the Cross County in Westchester. You blink and you miss it. It's so short. The Cross Bronx isn't any longer. It's just further south in a location with more traffic.
Right.
So, I mean, okay, maybe it's a little bit longer because the Cross County doesn't quite continue all the way to the river.
No, but I get your point, though. Like, it's a similar highway.
Yeah.
In its function. And
yep.
There's not as much traffic, so it's easier to get from one end to the other.
Yeah. Oh, my father always used to like to say the Cross County is a well-kept secret because there's never any traffic on it.
Yeah, I don't know how true that is.
It's not quite that there's never any traffic on it, but it's generally not particularly bad.
No, it's never nearly as bad as the Cross Bronx is.
Yeah, it's much better.
Usually the problem with the Cross County is at all the interchanges. With the Sprain and the Hutch and the Sawmill. Like, those are the major choke points that you encounter is maybe not necessarily on the main line, but on the connecting ramps you have a lot of issues.
Yeah. The other factor is on the Hutch. That goes down to 2 lanes when you cross from the Bronx into Westchester.
Yep.
And it really should be 3, at least up to the Cross County.
Well, that's one of the bigger bottlenecks, and that might be the single biggest bottleneck in Westchester.
Yeah.
The northbound side, it narrows down to 2 mainline lanes, and then the exit for the Cross County doesn't even have a lane to itself. It's basically a turnoff.
Yeah, well, I mean, what it should be is they should keep the 3rd lane up to there and have it go exit only for the Cross County.
Yeah, and then make that like a 2-lane ramp or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they... Yeah, I mean, that alone would solve a lot of the problem.
Yep.
But you're still dealing with 1930s geometry there. So... that's a big part of why that's so screwed up.
Yeah. Be interesting to see if that ever gets fixed in our lifetimes.
Yeah, well, I won't hold my breath.
I don't know. I mean, there are things that have improved that I thought wouldn't ever happen. So...
Yeah.
I mean, the replacement of the Goethals with a wider bridge, I don't think I saw that one coming.
Well, yeah, I mean, the bridges are a different story because they have a certain expiration date anyway.
Yeah.
They have to be replaced at some point no matter what. So you use a project like that to implement changes to your highway system and your capacity because it's a convenient time to do that anyway.
Yep. What's the longest expiration they've been able to do it for? 100 years? Something like that?
You mean like design life?
Yeah.
I believe the... I know they said that the new East Bay Bridge in Oakland was like 150 years. Now, I don't know how the hell you would be able to tell that. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, oh, we're going to build the bridge to last 100 years. How the hell do you know it's going to last 100 years?
Yeah.
You don't know what the hell you're talking about. What, did you get in a time machine and come back from 150 years in the future and say, hey, guess what? It's still standing.
Yeah. Oh, the Brooklyn Bridge has been going for, what, like 120-something at this point? No, I think more.
130-something, yeah.
Yeah. Because it was the 1880s, I think, when that opened.
Yes. Yeah.
So that one they've really kept going for a long time.
Well, I'm pretty sure they weren't marketing the Brooklyn Bridge in 1880 as, hey, we're going to make this bridge stand for 100 years.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think, that wasn't in the playbook of politicians at the time.
Nope.
And that is really what it comes down to, because I think that we're in a position now where we have to kind of sell the public on the project. So we'll say, okay, well, we're going to do this, this, and this for the project, but we'll build it to last X amount of time so that everybody says, well, you know what, it's going to cost a lot in year zero, but it'll play itself out over a very long period of time.
And in practice, if it winds up that it's 50 or 75 rather than 100, then by the time that 50 or 75 happens, you'll be retired anyway by that point, so no one's going to be able to hold you accountable for it career-wise anyway. So.
Well, that's true too. Yeah. Yeah. So the Goethals and the Tappan Zee Cuomo were designed for 100-year lifespan. I believe they were both 100 years, and I know the Bay Bridge was 150, but I think that's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. But
whether it's actually going to last that long.
I mean, I just think it's dumb to say that.
Well, if it actually does last that long, no one who's old enough to remember when it was built will be around to complain about the promise being broken.
Yeah.
So
we only got 100 years.
Barring some huge medical miracle between now and then.
Yeah, we only got 100 years out of this 150-year bridge. How dare they?
Yeah. So, what are you going to do? Fire the people who are dead?
I mean, I wouldn't put it past some people to try some weird shit. 100 years from now, jeez.
Oh, that thing you were talking about last night with the hearse was kind of funny.
No, did you like that?
Yeah.
Hey, people are resourceful, and they'll try literally anything to get away.
That they are. Although I will say, you're talking about a hearse. Why are the police bothering them over something like that? I mean, you're dealing with, people who just went through losing someone and all of that.
Well, the tack that I think they took was like, why the hell is there a hearse in an HOV lane anyway?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That seems like a very out of place location to find one.
Yeah.
But whatever.
And I guess it would be the funeral people who would be driving the hearse rather than the people who just lost someone.
Well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
By the way, you're getting a sneak peek at the Port Authority's Easy Pass toll by mail signage. Because obviously with COVID, we're not accepting cash at any of the area bridges and tunnels.
Yep.
And New York State Thruway, New Jersey Turnpike are the same deal as well. No cash.
Yeah. It was interesting when I was on the Turnpike, after coming across the George, I look at, the toll plaza and, seeing where there's a good Easy Pass lane to go through. And it's like, oh, everything is Easy Pass only now.
Yeah, right. Everything is signed the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was just consistently Easy Pass, no cash, all the way across this huge toll plaza.
Yeah, and how many people do you think were massively confused when they were like, but where am I supposed to pay with cash?
Well, I'm sure there are people who went through there thinking that if they didn't have an Easy Pass, they were going to be in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah,
so,
you do get people who are like, I don't know what the hell to do. But
yeah.
I don't know. I think we've got time for one more video, so let's do this one. This is a nice hybrid video. It's got some local street stuff in it, and it's got some highway stuff near the end also.
Yep. What are we on, 3rd Avenue here?
I think this is 3rd. 3rd on the upper east side.
Yes, also known as East Harlem.
Yes, this is. Yep.
Yep. And we're going to run out of Manhattan pretty soon.
Yeah, we're running out of real estate.
So I'm interested to see what you're going to do when you run out of Manhattan.
Uh-oh. See, this is riveting TV, because you have no idea what I'm going to do next.
I mean, I have a guess as to one or two things, but...
Yeah.
I assume it's going to be either the Willis Avenue Bridge or the Madison Avenue Bridge.
Well, there is a bridge involved.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Yeah, well, I'm not parking the car and swimming.
Don't think that would go over too well.
No.
Trying to do that.
All right, so yours is 125th.
All right, so 125th. You're doing, well, I guess it could be either Willis Avenue or Triborough.
Uh-huh. So.
And it's Triborough.
There's your answer. Because I know Steve's watching, so I want to make sure that I pay one more toll on this live stream. Just to piss him off. But
you were saying that he doesn't want to pay the toll to come to your place. I'm like, what's the toll on the Bear Mountain Bridge at this point? Like $2 or something?
So the toll went up the other day on May 1st, up to $1.75.
Yeah, for both directions.
Yeah.
I mean, compare that to, when I go to New Jersey. That's like nothing.
That's true, yeah. Well, yeah, like, everyone in the Hudson Valley who complains about the tolls up here, I'm like, dude, if you think we have it bad here, like, go downriver a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I take a day trip to New Jersey, I'm spending, like, what, $25 on tolls? Something like that?
Oh, at least.
Yeah. So... yeah, I was talking just about the bridges there. I was not including turnpike tolls. So.
Oh, yeah, like before you even get to the turnpike, yeah.
Yeah. Because there's the Verrazano and either the Outer Bridge or the Goethals. And those are both a fortune.
Yeah, because you get your ass kicked with the Port Authority bridges and tunnels.
Yeah.
And then you're getting your ass kicked to leave Long Island with the MTA bridges.
Yes.
So you're getting hit hard both ways.
Between those two, it adds up to, I think it's about $25.
Yeah, because you're paying with Easy Pass, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I get a discount. If I didn't have Easy Pass, then I think it would be more like $35.
Oh yeah, something ridiculous like that. Yeah.
Yeah, when I got my car, one of the first things I did was to go get myself an Easy Pass because that was just a no-brainer.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, like, why would I sit around at the toll booth to get ripped off on cash prices?
Yeah, to pay like 30 to 40% more, with cash.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, it doesn't make any sense why you wouldn't have one.
Right. I mean, I guess if you don't have a credit card, that makes it more challenging. But I think that most people who are in in economic situations where they're able to have a car are probably not going to have difficulty getting a credit card, I would think. Yeah,
I would say that if you're having trouble getting a transponder, then probably that's the least of your problems.
Right, right.
Well, we're coming to the end of this video, and I think I've given you guys enough BS to review for the next few weeks until the videos start appearing starting on May 25th. So we will pause from our tour of the southwestern U.S. at that point, and we'll switch over back to some familiar territory for all of you at the end of this month. So in a way, as we approach the 10-year anniversary of this channel, we've basically come full circle. The first thing I uploaded was New York City stuff, and now at the 10-year anniversary of the channel, we come back to New York once again. David, it's been great having you tonight.
Been great being here, and looking forward to talking with you some more next weekend.
Yeah, so what do you want to do next week?
Thought we were going to talk about East Coast roads was the plan.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's do an interview. What do you say?
I say that sounds good.
All right. So you see that, people? We've already figured out what the hell we're doing next Sunday. So David will be right back here with us next Sunday, so we'll figure out what the hell his deal is. And we'll have a good time talking about his website and his backstory. And that should be a lot of fun. So looking forward to having you next Sunday.
Yeah, and in the meantime, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, head over to eastcoastroads.com and you can get a preview of what we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. So I know we'll talk about it more next week, but he's got quite a collection of stuff himself. So
yeah, thank you.
So I'm sure we'll get into that in plenty of detail next Sunday. But until then, just a quick programming reminder, we will begin our daily afternoon commute live drives again. The cycle begins anew tomorrow, another week of programming. And before you know it, it's going to be another weekend, and we'll have another round of webinars and interviews for you. So get ready. You know the routine by now. So the cycle will get started again tomorrow. And looking forward to hanging out with you guys again for another week of original programming. So I think we'll sign off from here. Thanks again to David for joining us, and from all of us here, have a good night, and we'll be talking to you again soon. Take it easy.